All right, hey sports fans, welcome to this week's edition of NFL Football Talk presented by Inside Sports. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr., and hey, hard to believe we're already coming up on week 4 here. It's just rushing by, but we'll see what's happening. There's a lot of sense. We still got to make sense of things, not just the Goodell situation, but also some of these teams. What's wrong with the Packers? What's wrong with the 49ers? And can you believe which 3 teams are still undefeated at this time? So let's go ahead and bring in my main man here to make sense of all this for us. None other than the man many of you already follow on Twitter at Chris L Sports. None other than the one, the only, Chris Lardieri.
Charles, how's it going? Another week. We know about the same, if not less, about everything that the league knew about Ray Rice, where we stand with Adrian Peterson, Ray McDonald, and a few others. So actually give us some time to pause and reflect and pay attention to some actual football games for a change.
Yep, that's true. And you know what? Before that, though, we got to at least, hit a little bit of those little side things before we get into breaking down the nuts and bolts of these, the Packers, the Niners, Jim Harbaugh, Lovie Smith having a horrible time down there in Tampa Bay, and also the possible curse of Logan Mankins. But the ESPN suspension of Bill Simmons because he allegedly implied that Roger Goodell was less than truthful. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, he used the L word, and it wasn't less than truthful. I actually listened to the podcast, the concept, considering we're new media as well. But normally I don't listen to that particular show. Cousin Sal, frankly, annoys me. But when I was scrolling through my podcast list and I saw that Bill went off on Roger Goodell, I figured I'd better listen. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with it other than he was legitimately peeved and cursed a few times, which was bleeped out. The problem was he called him a liar, but if you ask me, he didn't say anything more different than what, like you had mentioned in the pre-show, what Chris Mortensen had said, or any number of announcers and analysts have said on ESPN, insinuating that they don't believe Goodell for a minute, and they believe that the league had the tape and that he did know about it, and there's a big cover-up. So I think what happened is the thing that really did Simmons in was, I don't care, and insinuating that I don't care what you do to me if you suspend me. But sure enough, he called ESPN's bluff, and 2 days later they got him for 3 weeks. But at the end of the day, when you're paying billions of dollars to the NFL, you're going to protect your investment, not your star reporter / podcaster.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, that was the other thing that I heard, which I admit to everyone, I did not actually hear it, but the thing that, from what I understand, really sunk him was him daring ESPN to do anything about it. And we got to remember how closely tied ESPN and the NFL are. If you remember that little mini-series they had going on called Playmakers a few seasons back, it's probably been about 5 years now, but it was actually the NFL that pressured ESPN to take that series off the air, even though they don't talk about it. But that's what happened there.
Absolutely, it's well documented, and like you said, people have gotten it. But look at the list of people who have made comments about the Ray Rice situation at ESPN. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith, guys who aren't even really hardcore NFL commentators, and they've gotten suspended. Skip Bayless has gotten suspended in the past, although I completely agree with that. He's annoying. But I mean, ESPN they love suspending people, and at the end of the day, what does ESPN stand for? The Entertainment and Sports Programming Network. Let's not forget that.
That's true. That's right. Entertainment before sports. And then, remember, Stephen A. only got suspended for 3 days, though, for his comments on the Ray Rice situation, but Simmons gets 3 weeks. That's interesting. When you look at one person possibly making an insensitive comment about domestic abuse gets 3 days, but you call the commissioner of the NFL a liar, you get 3 weeks.
See, here's where the NFL and ESPN are very much alike. Simmons is a repeat offender. He's been suspended twice before, so once that happens, you have to get slapped on the wrist a little harder. Now, see, Stephen A. Smith, much like Ray Rice, was only a first-time offender, so 3 days equals 2 games, I guess.
Okay, it all makes sense. And you know what, Chris? That's why I love doing this show with you. NFL Football Talk, myself, Charles E. Smith Jr., and Chris Lardieri, who can make sense of many of these situations, which I would have been at night when I would have gone to bed tonight tossing and turning all night long had we not done the show tonight, Chris. So I really thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Charles. I mean, there's plenty to toss and turn about, and I knew that was probably at the top of your subconscious list. But I'm glad I can help. This is what I get paid the big bucks for, and my pleasure.
All right. Okay, so you know what? Let's get into the games of this week. And really, one of the notable games, and when we look at just the tradition of football, the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they did to the Carolina Panthers on Sunday night. Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount teaming up together for 265 yards on the ground. So, looks like we may be back to Steeler football, even though they lost 2 linebackers in the course of the game and had to pull James Harrison out of retirement, but it looks like the offense is on track anyways.
Yeah, definitely. It's echoing memories of Bam Morris and the bus Bennett, I guess. But yeah, very, very impressive, especially when you consider, even without Greg Hardy, Carolina's defense was very stout the first 2 weeks of the season, even going back to last year. So I think that'll make Big Ben happy. It'll take some pressure off of him and free up the passing lanes when you're running the ball that well.
Yep, that's true. And, the Pittsburgh tradition was built on that smash mouth football, so it's good to see them get back to that. Now, the other team, how about the New England Patriots? Tom Brady and that offense just not clicking. In fact, a lot of the big offenses now, we'll talk about New Orleans in a little bit, but Brady in the offense there in a really tough game against the Oakland Raiders, which came down to Vince Wilfork having to save the day.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things that stick out to me about the Patriots. One, their complete and utter lack of a running game, and two, how both Gronkowski and Brady, it appears, are showing some signs of age. Look, I get it. The Raiders' defense has played well a couple times this season, also against the Jets. But, this is not the Seattle Seahawks they're going up against. And quite frankly, the Raiders had plenty of opportunities to win that game and didn't capitalize on them. So I wonder if there might be cause for some concern in New England. Then I look at the rest of the AFC East, and every other team in the division lost. So you never know. It could be like their counterparts on the NFC side in the East, where 9-7, 10-6 will get the job done.
That's true. And you know what? Let's talk about the Raiders. We don't give them a whole lot of love here on the show, but let's look at Derek Carr, and that's another decent outing for him. His first week, the week before there. Do you think maybe the Raiders have found a quarterback there in Derek Carr? Is he the real deal for him?
I'll be honest with you, when they drafted him, I liked the pick, especially in the second round. I'd watched some of his games last year at Fresno State. I was intrigued, knowing that he was David's little brother and hoping he wouldn't be as cursed professional as he was. And I think he will be good. And then again, when your alternative is Matt Schaub, the perennial choke artist / injured elbow Matt Schaub, I mean, I think it was worth a gamble playing him when they knew. Really, it wasn't like the Raiders are a playoff team this year, so give him some work. And look now, you look at a team like Minnesota, they've had to thrust Teddy Bridgewater in the lineup to the injury to Matt Castle, and at least Carr's got a couple more weeks under his belt, and will only get more seasoned as the year goes on.
Yep, that's true. So, Teddy Bridgewater going in because Matt Castle basically got his foot crushed in that game. But Bridgewater himself, he didn't look bad in that game either. And, that's kind of a transition to the other team that's having problems, which is the Saints. They get their first win of the year, but it is against a Minnesota team that had a rookie quarterback, missing their star running back, and their tight end is gone too. So, hey, what's going on there in New Orleans?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, you would think a game like that, Peyton and company would light it up on offense, and they didn't. And always worried with the Rob Ryan defense. You never know what you're going to get. So as the schedule gets a little tougher, and they face the Carolinas of the world and the Atlantas again, it'll be interesting to see which team shows up. But that said, at least they get to beat up on Tampa Bay twice this season.
Yeah, that's true. And what about Tampa Bay? My theory is this is a curse of Logan Mankins. They traded Logan Mankins there right before the season started. The New England Patriots did, and got what's the tight end is Tim Wright? Is that his name?
Yeah, I believe so. He's very memorable, as you can tell.
Right. So kind of a sorry move. I'll tell you what. If you banished me to Tampa Bay, I would put a curse on you as well. But I got a feel for Lovie Smith down there in Tampa, and that thumping they got put on them against Atlanta last week was that was terrible. It looked like Atlanta was playing a JC team.
Yeah, that looked like a college football game. That looked like Baylor versus Buffalo a couple weeks ago on a Friday night. And, I think Smith will turn things around there. The cupboard's fairly bare. We did plenty of bashing of Greg Schiano the last couple of years, but even their front office hasn't done that good a job of drafting. They jettisoned Josh Freeman, bring in Josh McCown, and he clearly is this year's version of Matt Flynn. So not quite sure what's going on there. On the defensive side of the ball, they've been decimated with injuries, but I didn't think they'd be this bad. I thought maybe, they might improve. Could be an 8-8 team, looking forward to 2015, but they might end up being the worst team in football, whereas we thought that was going to be reserved for someone like the Browns.
Yeah, that's true, and the Browns really, they're balling pretty well. But I'll tell you what, Tampa Bay, if I was Bucs management, if I was the GM, the president, or anything, I would never allow a quarterback named Josh to start for my team, or even allow him on the practice squad. That's it. I'm through with quarterbacks named Josh now and forever.
The curse of Josh.
Okay, and then what about some other high-profile teams? The 49ers still having trouble. They've been outscored 52-3 in the second half of games so far this year. Frank Gore's not getting it done. Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, there's a little bit of whispering. There's some chirping maybe coming out there. What do you think up there in the Bay Area?
Yeah, they got off to a slow start last year, and considering I picked them to be Super Bowl contenders this year, I suppose I should stick to my guns a mere 4 weeks in and say, maybe when Aldon Smith comes back and some of these other issues clear themselves up, yeah, they'll turn it around. Ray McDonald, who knows what's going to happen there. But, you look at the first game even, the Cowboys handed them that game. The 49ers were not that impressive. So you're looking at a team that could potentially be 3-0 right now. And I get it. They played the Cardinals, who are one of the surprise teams, but, a quality team, should have made the playoffs last year. But, it's not going to get any easier. They play the undefeated Eagles this week. Part of me wonders, because you alluded to the Harbaugh whispers, the Michigan rumor is always going to be there, especially with how pathetic they're playing right now on the college side. But right up your alley, I hear the Miami Dolphin whispers coming again, and we know Steve Ross probably wants to get a quality name coach back down there in South Beach.
Yep, that's true. And then what about the other team, Green Bay Packers? And I watched some of this game, and what was troubling is they can say what they want about the offensive line, okay, and that may be one of the reasons why Eddie Lacy can't really get going, but I saw Rodgers playing, and even though he went on the radio this week and he said to all the Packer fans, RELAX, relax. But when he's missing wide open guys and throwing the ball at guys' feet, throwing it behind them, this is Rodgers. This is the guy who I think is the best quarterback in the league at this point, but something is clearly wrong there.
Yeah, definitely. And now the rumblings are starting to come out. We know he can read and write. He went to Berkeley, so you alums from up there should be pleased that he can spell. But regardless, there are rumblings now that he was chewing out his rookie center and getting on his receivers, and supposedly his teammates aren't too happy with that. So, could be some attitude issues there, issues in the proverbial clubhouse. All I know is my pathetic Giants managed to score 14 points on the Lions D, which is not stout, but that was really a pathetic performance from the Packers on Sunday, only putting up 7.
Yeah, that's true, and that's one of those, supposedly high-powered offenses, but we'll see. And, looking on that line, how about your Giants finally getting off the schneid? Taking down the Texans.
Yeah, I'm happy they got a win, but after all, it's the Texans. They were up to their usual shenanigans in the first quarter, fumbling at the one, fumbling a snap on a field goal, and then the Texans all but gave them far too many opportunities to win that game. And Victor Cruz sighting. Not only did he catch the ball, he caught a touchdown. So we'll see. Be an interesting NFC East rivalry this week against the high-powered Kirk Cousins-led Redskins. So I don't expect a lot of defense to be played outside of D.C. tomorrow night.
I think that's going to be a great game, though. And, speaking of Kirk Cousins, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I know it's still early, but, man, that Washington offense, even though they lost, to the Eagles, who are a good team. But that offense just runs so smooth with Cousins back there.
Definitely, and like we've been hitting on, hammering home, Joe Theismann-esque. He's a pocket passer. He's got a good arm. He's not just looking to dump the ball off. He doesn't stare down his receiver. And I know one man who must be happy, and it's Mr. Deshaun Jackson. So I think they're going to be, especially led by a Gruden, I think they're going to be entertaining to watch the rest of the season. Well, it might not be a playoff team, but man can throw the ball and put some points on the board.
And like I said, when RG3 is healthy, I think that Dan Snyder should go ahead and get something for him while his stock is still up. But then again, I'll tell you this, if it's a Gruden decision, I think that even when RG3 becomes healthy, I think Cousins will still be starting. But if it's a Snyder decision, RG3 will be back in there.
Yeah, the man who's now the new Al Davis or Jerry Jones, I guess. It's going to be very interesting in a few weeks. Or maybe they could get James Andrews to come back and Mike Shanahan, and they can debate as to whether RG3 was really cleared to play or not and make a mess out of that again.
Yep, and another quarterback we talked about, and this was a game that just happened, but Nick Foles. We talked about maybe, Derek Carr being the real deal in Oakland. It looks like Nick Foles, here he is in second season. No signs of a sophomore jinx here. So Nick Foles, I think they might have their genuine franchise quarterback, even though a few weeks ago Donovan McNabb, of course, couldn't just say, we'll wait and see or anything like that. He just had to get a little shot in at Nick Foles saying that he wasn't a franchise QB, but Foles has proven him wrong.
Yeah, Donovan McNabb's one of these guys. He makes these comments. I know how it goes. Negative attention's better than no attention. He's kind of like Philly's version of Tiki Barber. He likes saying controversial things and putting his foot in his mouth so people pay attention. But then he just shows his true colors. Foles has been up and down a little bit this season, particularly in the first half. I don't know what his deal is. He loves playing second half football, but even still, cut the guy a break. McNabb took his team to a number of NFC championship games, literally threw up during a Super Bowl with the game on the line.
Yeah.
And, for him to pass judgment on someone else is really the pot calling the kettle black.
All right, so, hey, and what about the Jets? Geno Smith, you got a bad situation here with Geno Smith at quarterback there. He can move them anywhere but into the end zone. Last game they had 6 trips to the red zone, only came away with 1 touchdown. But he seems like to be kind of like Neil O'Donnell. Neil O'Donnell, as you know, he could move the ball between the 25 and the 25 as well as anybody. But he couldn't get the ball into the end zone. And here you got Geno Smith, who I think is maybe the future, but with Michael Vick, if you were to put him in, that at 35, I think he is now, you're not going to get a different Michael Vick than the Michael Vick we've seen for all these years. So, what do you think down there with the Jets?
Well, I think what I always think. I think the team's a mess. I think Rex Ryan is a mess as well. You look at the timeout from 2 weeks ago. Look at this week now. He's saying Geno's this guy. Well, what happens when he inevitably pulls him? In bigger picture, did he or anyone in the Jets front office not learn their lesson with the whole Tebow fiasco? If Sanchez is your guy, why are you bringing Tebow in? Well, they turn around and do the same thing. They get rid of Sanchez, get rid of one headache, and let's bring Michael Vick in when there were plenty of other guys they could have brought in to back him up. Short of drafting Johnny Manziel, I could have thought of 10 other guys, even Matt Schaub, that they probably could have brought in to create less stress than having Vick looking over his shoulder. So, yeah, I just chalk it up to typical Jets. Is Smith the answer? I don't know. I don't think it's fair to say at this point, playing one in barely a quarter years, but questionable decisions, but such is life with a young NFL quarterback. Well, let's see if he turns it around.
Yep, that's true. So, that said, we talked about everything last week. Any last words before we get into the picks of the week here?
Yeah, I'm very, very curious to see how the Cardinals, now I know they're on bye this week. I'm curious to see if they're the real deal. I am looking forward to when they play the Seahawks, because that defense is one team that is not intimidated by the Seahawks at all. They like playing smash-mouth football, and people forget they went up to Seattle last year and beat them late in the season. So if the 49ers continue to putter, could the Cardinals be the new challengers to the Seahawks? Very interesting. And let's face it, Bruce Arians toiled in obscurity and was a coordinator for many years, never got his shot. I think that's a great story that not a lot of people are talking about. And doing it with a backup quarterback, Drew Stanton. And
yeah.
when he's healthy, another one that everyone thought was washed up, and Carson Palmer. Very impressive to me so far.
And also remember that defense, they're missing Darnell Dockett, Carlos Dansby, and John Abraham. So they're just balling hard there in AZ.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when you have the man that allegedly isn't the best cornerback in the game, according to Richard Sherman and Patrick Peterson. Not a lot of people get to see him, but he's really a talented guy. And if you get the chance to watch him, even in terms of special teams, the guy's electrifying.
Yep, absolutely. So now the picks of the week. You know, I got to commend my man Chris Lardieri again, 3-3 last week. So, hey, you know, Chris, how do you do it, man? How do you get that 3-3 every single week?
I wish I could say I had some Moneyball-like algorithm or that I just threw darts at a board, but I just pick them poorly.
Okay. All right. So the standings for the year, I sit at 10-8. Chris sitting at 9-9. But that'll probably all change this week. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first game up, the Thursday night game, a pair of 1-2 teams, division rivalry. This should be a good game here. New York Giants at Washington. And remember, Washington just lost D'Angelo Hall off their defense there. D'Angelo Hall is done for the year with an Achilles. And it looks like the Giants are really starting to hit stride here. So, you know, I like these. I'm going to tell you, I like the Giants. I like them. I thought they were starting to get things going in week 2. They played better last week, and I think everything's going to crest here. I like the Giants to go into D.C. and take down the Redskins.
All right, we're going to disagree again. So that means one of us will have to win this game. In keeping with the usual Thursday night theme, I'm going to go with the home team. And on top of that, I was watching that Washington game, and I was just really impressed with Cousins. He drove the team down the field, and Forbath missed the 30-plus-something-yard chip shot, hit the upright.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I think it was really a momentum changer for the Eagles. Had they at least kicked the field goal or knocked the ball into the end zone, I think Washington ends up winning that game. I like the way the offense is running. I think this is going to be a game of two porous defenses. Could come down to the last team with the ball, and at the end of the day, I think Washington's got a better offense right now than the Giants.
All right, well, we shall see. And Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is saying he's going to be the difference in this game, just to let you know.
That's good. That's really good. I'm glad for him. He's such a... I know they paid him a lot of money, and he's a good corner, don't get me wrong, but don't think they've called his name much this year, so it'd be nice if he'd start.
All righty, so why don't you go ahead and break down our next game here. We got the Green Bay Packers in Chicago to take on the Bears.
Yeah, the Packers and their suddenly anemic offense head to Chicago. The resurgent Bears with 2 impressive road wins at San Francisco and in the Meadowlands Monday night against the Jets. Traditionally, Green Bay has Chicago's number. You look at the last regular season game of last year, a bitter rivalry, as well as the Bears are playing. I don't know why. My gut, which hasn't been very good this year, is only batting .500. But Packers are such an up-and-down team. I think they rebound. Weather doesn't appear to be an issue so far this week heading into Chicago. I think with all the scrutiny on Rodgers, probably lights a fire under him. There's the Bears defense. Let's face it, they stepped up against the 49ers and Jets, but neither of those teams have the caliber of quarterback of Aaron Rodgers, and I think the Packers get even and get a win. All
right, well, you know what? We're going to have to go against each other again here because I like what the Bears did. Now, granted, I know the Jets are not the best team in the world, but I like the way the Bears are playing. And Green Bay, I don't see their offense coming together. I just don't see it coming together, and the Bears have that gambling defense. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to pick them apart the way that he needs to. If Eddie Lacy gets off, then the Packers win. I'll just say this. I'm going to take the Bears, but if the Packers win, guaranteed Eddie Lacy has over 100 yards rushing. I'll say that, but I got the Bears in this game because I don't think he's going to get over 100 yards.
Should hedge that bet and bet the over on Eddie Lacy yardage in Vegas this weekend. How about that?
Okay, and then next game, Carolina Panthers a little banged up. We don't know what the condition of RG3 is. Going against the Ravens. The Ravens just lost Dennis Pitta with that hip injury again. So a couple of banged up teams here. Carolina going into Baltimore. I'm going to have to go with the experience here. And also Carolina is missing Mike Tolbert, their fullback, is done too. And we don't know what's going on with their other running backs there. John Stewart has a sprained knee. D'Angelo Williams has been out. So the running game is suspect. And I saw a bit of a meltdown against that Steelers team. So going into Baltimore, I'm going to go with the home team there. And I like Baltimore to win this game.
All right, we're going to disagree again. I think Carolina bounces back. I think that was a bit of an aberration given the fact that most teams don't have two quality running backs to pound the ball like the Steelers do. You look at Baltimore, another team that's already getting the injury bug.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the great Lorenzo Taliaferro, I believe his name is. I can't even pronounce it. At running back now, that doesn't scare me. That said, I think this game could be a completely boring defensive struggle. Something in the neighborhood of 17-10, 17-14.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I still have confidence in the Carolina D as Flacco's running out of guys to throw the ball to.
All right, so we bet the under on this one, correct?
Yes, for pure entertainment purposes. So I don't want to get suspended for 3 weeks or anything.
There you go. And all right, Chris, go ahead and break down the next one here. How about the Philadelphia Eagles at the 49ers? Eagles sitting at a perfect, sparkling 3-0 record. The Niners sitting at 1-2. If they lose this game at home, it'll send everyone into a tizzy. Talk to me.
The Eagles have been doing it with smoke and mirrors, a lot of late game rallies and second half rallies. People are finally going to believe in this team, Chip Kelly. I know, as cynical as I tend to be about my friends down in Philadelphia, this team's got something going. They've got some character. And then the utter turmoil and the fact that Jim Harbaugh, pardon my French, doesn't seem to give a crap anymore and is feuding with the front office. Could he be already interviewing somewhere else? Who knows? But at the end of the day, Colin Kaepernick has not been playing well. This could be another one where the 49ers defense really is not up to par to previous years. Eagles defense isn't that much to write home about. I'm going here with a momentum play, and I'm going to pick the Eagles to win, keep the streak going, and maybe Chip Kelly schools Jim Harbaugh for once.
Yep, and even though the Eagles will be missing their center Jason Kelce, who's out. He's going to be out. He's got the sports hernia surgery. He'll be out for 8 weeks, I believe. But still, I think Philly has enough to get it done. And also Philly with the conditioning and the late game, the way that they play in the second half versus the Niners, who have been outscored 52-3 in the second half of games this season. I think it's one of those perfect storm situations. And I think the Philly goes in there, they take them down, and it is going to be just an ugly week up there in the Bay Area with the newspapers and the talk shows and everyone else, and all the fans are going to be chirping all week next week because the Niners are going to be 1-3, and they're going to be sure the earth is going to stop spinning on its axis at any moment.
Oh, it's going to be entertaining to say the least.
Okay, and then let's see, we got the Saints. New Orleans Saints sitting at 1-2, finally got their first win at Dallas to play the Cowboys on Sunday night. Should be a good game. I still don't like the New Orleans offense. Still, they only beat Minnesota 20-9. So I don't know what the problem is there. Jimmy Graham got his big contract. Everything should be happy honky dory there in New Orleans, but it's not. And then Dallas having to squeak out wins against inferior teams as well. So this is a strange game here. This is one that's hard to pick. I'm gonna go with New Orleans. Just because I trust Drew Brees in a big game more so than I trust Tony Romo. So I'm going to take the Saints in this game.
I'm going to agree with you. I look at what Dallas did last week. They got lucky. They let a third-string quarterback Rams team nearly back into that game to take the lead. And again, too many holes on the Dallas defense. Morris Claiborne, who was a high draft pick, has been benched and walked out and came back. And I mean, when he's not starting, that's a lot about your team. Not that he's great, but
right,
it's not the greatest defense in the world. So they don't need more strife on the defensive side of the ball. And like you hit on, I trust Breeze over Romo. And from purely a mental play, I think Rob Ryan's going to want to get even with his former employer. So I'll go Saints as well.
All right, and then just one more game to pick here, and you can break this one down. The Patriots and their sputtering offense against the Chiefs and their somewhat sputtering offense too here. But the game is in Kansas City. Talk to me. This will be the Monday night showdown.
Yeah, on paper you would think New England could blow the doors off the Chiefs, but not with the way this offense is playing. KC as well. I mean, you got a nice win against your Dolphins, but no offense, it was the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So we'll see which Alex Smith KC offense shows up. At the end of the day, you've got two teams that are banged up, somewhat schizophrenic this year. For me, I will take Belichick and Brady over Alex Smith and Andy Reid. It's very, very rare that you see the Patriots have two dud games in a row, and I wouldn't want to be in that locker room this week up in Foxborough. So I'll go Patriots. I think they rally and right the ship for at least this week against a Chiefs defense that tends to be porous at times.
Yeah, and that's for the same reasons you said. There's no real analysis that needs to be done here. It really just comes down to you have two imperfect teams. So I'll take the guy who's been to 5 Super Bowls over Alex Smith, and the guy who knows how to get it done in the clutch. And it could be the ugliest game of the weekend. It might very well be. But still, I think even with the game on the line, I don't trust Alex Smith to get the job done. I would trust Brady to get the job done. So I'm going Patriots too.
I agree, and even though it could potentially be the ugliest game of the weekend, John Gruden will try and make it interesting, and he will say a lot of great things about a lot of players.
Yeah. I try to watch, and I'd like to get some of his stuff out on Twitter, but I'm afraid that I'm going to miss it miss something else while I'm typing it in, because he does ramble, doesn't he?
He really does. He's at the point now where when I hear him, I almost think he's a caricature of himself. Like, I just hear the Frank Caliendo impression in his head. I just want Frank Caliendo to do Monday Night Football as John Gruden. I think they'd be more entertaining and insightful.
Yeah, it's true. And the funny thing is that Gruden talks so much. He acts like he's doing baseball or something. During football games, you don't have to talk that much.
Yeah, he's kind of like it's a good analogy. He's kind of like Vin Scully, who's his own play-by-play and color guy, except he has a play-by-play guy. Yep.
All right, so before we go ahead and sign off, any final words for everybody, Mr. Lardieri?
Here's my prediction. When the storm blows over and Roger Goodell gets the PR machine going and inevitably keeps his job as I predicted, the story that everyone will start talking about when they'll need something new to beat to a pulp are the tremendous rise in injuries again. And no one's crunched the numbers yet, and I would, but, got a day job and better things to do at my time, like organize my sock drawer. But, you look, every team has skilled player positions hurt, whether it's on the offensive line, defensive backfield, running backs, wide receivers. We haven't had, other than Castle, we haven't had a quarterback go down yet of any significance. So I really think it may come to that next. So that's the next storyline to watch on, keep your eye on, in my opinion.
Well, but the NFL, they can drag anything out for as long as they want. After all, remember, how long did it take them to determine that turf was actually more damaging on your knees and your career than natural grass? When you had all these slew of players complaining for years.
Yeah, well, it was like concussions. It only took 2 years for them to figure it out, but it took another 28 to bury the evidence. So, yeah, it took 3 decades. Wait, can I get suspended for saying that? I'm sorry.
Well, we hope not.
All right.
Okay, all right, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening. Remember, I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr. We do this every single week, NFL Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. You can follow Chris Lardieri at Chris L. Sports. So I'm sure it'll be another fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us. We do it for you, the fans. NFL Football Talk right here on Inside Sports. Thanks for joining us.